Well, my name is Giovanni Cardenas Gonzalez, and I choose the topics of biology, fields of study, and branches of biology, and how life starts in the planet. Well, first, there are so many branches of biology, but the four most important are the botany, that is the scientific study of plants; the human biology, that examines humans through the influence and interplay of many diverse fields such as genetics, evolution, physiology, anatomy, among other things; and the microbiology is the study of the biology of microscopic organisms like viruses, bacteria, among other things. The zoology is a branch of biology which specializes in the study of animals, both living and extinct, including their anatomy and physiology; embryology too, genetics, evolution, classification, habits, behavior, and distribution. Well, about how the life started in the planet, we know that life began at least 3.5 billion years ago, but many ideas have been proposed to explain how life began. Most are based on the assumption that the cells are too complex to have formed all at once, so life must have started with just a component that survived and somehow create the others around it.
Hi, I'm Roberto Munoz, and I'm going to talk about the characteristics of living things. I have a list of 10 of them. The first one is that living things can grow and develop, they obtain and use energy, they can adapt to their environment and also respond to them. They are made or composed of one or more cells, and all living things obviously can excrete to remove the waste from their body. And also I have for you the differences between the eukaryotic cells and prokaryotic cells. First, the prokaryotic. They are unicellular, they have lysosomes and peroxisomes. Well, they don't have lysosomes and peroxisomes. They don't have microtubules and they don't have endoplasmic reticulum. Now, for the other hand, the eukaryotic cells, they are multicellular, they have lysosomes and peroxisomes. They have obviously microtubules and an endoplasmic reticulum.
Hello, my name is Aurelio Juarez Peña, and I'm going to talk about the history of the microscope and the cell theory. Let's start with the history of the microscope. The observation of the world of tiny things began with the magnifying lenses that represent the simple version of a microscope. The oldest lens was made in the Syrian Empire, and the Greek, the Egyptian, the Roman, and the Babylonian civilizations also made and used glasses. Now let's fast forward to the creation of the microscope. With absolute certainty, we can say that no one knows who created the microscope, but Zacharias Jensen, Galileo Galilei, or Cornelius Revel could be the inventors of this device. What we can say is that it was invented in the late 16th century and in the early 17th centuries. However, Zacharias Jensen seems to be the most likely inventor since he worked with his father and both were pre-engaged with glasses. Fast forward, Robert Hooke in 1665 was who envisioned the potential of the invention in the field of science. He used the concept of cell and the observations of different samples. The microscope that allowed him to do this was a magnification of up to 50 times, and Robert Hooke published all these observations in 1665 in where he described the cork oak and noticed that his tissue was made up of small pieces that were repeated. To these species he gave the name of cells. So let's now talk about what is a cell. Cells are complex thermodynamic structures that use energy to maintain the conditions that allow their existence. These cells share the following three characteristics: plasma membrane, cytoplasm, and genetic material. Through the years, different researchers and important figures describe and name parts of the cell, and all of these discoveries help to develop the cell theory. As we just mentioned, many researchers participated indirectly in the creation of the cell theory, and in 1830, Theodor Sachon and Matthias Skelden proposed what was later considered as the first postulate of the cell theory. And this postulate stated that the cell is a fundamental unit of all plants and animals and is the fundamental basis of all vital processes. Now let's fast forward to the cell theory. For the first postulate, we have that the cell is the morphological and structural unit of every living being. That is, all living beings are made up of cells and the products they generate. Here we have a modern microscope and a picture of a cell. So let's start with the second postulate. Omnicellula ex cellula, which means every cell comes from a pre-existent one, and that is the second postulate. And with this postulate, the theory of a spontaneous generation was completely abolished. For the third postulate, we have that the cell is the physiological unit of life. All vital functions occur within the cells, and only one is enough to have a living being. With this, they talk about the unicellular beings that are living beings that only have one cell. And for the fourth postulate, we have the cell contains the hereditary information to control its own development, growth, reproduction, and to transmit that information to the next generation. So we can add a fifth postulate that states that disease begins in the cell. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy our video.
Everything that enters or leaves a cell has to pass through the cell membrane, which is an organelle that is present in all cell types. This process is carried out by cellular transport. This process can be classified according to the amount of molecules that pass through the membrane. If they pass one by one, then the transportation can be active or passive. Active transport spends energy and goes against gradients of concentration. Passive transport does not waste energy and goes in favor of concentration gradient. It can be simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and ultrafiltration. In simple diffusion, the molecules cross the lipid bilayer. Gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen pass through it freely. On the other hand, in facilitated diffusion, the passage of molecules depends on the presence of the integral membrane, proteins that allows this passage. These proteins can form channels or complex transporters. When the transport through the membrane is massive, that is, in large quantities of material and with energy expenditure, then it is classified as endocytosis and exocytosis. Endocytosis is incorporation of material into the cell. Exocytosis is the secretion of the material produced by the cells. We know that the components that make up living things and the living things themselves constitute of levels of organized complexity. The first level is the atom. The atoms form molecules and biomolecules. The biomolecules constitute the organelles and structures. That set of organelles form the functional unit of life, that is the cell. A set of cells specialized in specific functions form a tissue. Then the tissues form organs, and the organs are grouped into systems. A multicellular organism constitutes the individual. A population is made up of individuals of the same species. By that, the community is formed by a set of populations. The grouping of populations of all domains together constitutes the ecosystem. Finally, the biosphere is the total set of ecosystems present on Earth.
Homeostasis. Homeostasis, from the Greek words for same and steady, refers to any process that living things use to actively maintain fairly stable conditions necessary for survival. The term was first coined by a physiologist named Walter Cannon in 1926. More specifically, homeostasis is the body's tendency to monitor and maintain internal states such as temperature and blood sugar at fairly constant and stable levels. Homeostasis has found useful applications in the social sciences. It refers to how a person under conflicting stresses and motivations can maintain a stable physiological condition. A society homeostatically maintains its stability despite competing political, economic, and cultural factors. Homeostasis is maintained in the way that the body has set points for a variety of states, including temperature, weight, sleep, thirst, and hunger. When the level is off in either direction, too much or too little, homeostasis will work to correct it. For example, to regulate temperature, you will sweat when you get too hot or shiver when you get too cold. These are the primary components of homeostasis and how they work. Number one, stimulus. A stimulus from a change in the environment kicks something out of balance in the body. The two, receptor. The receptor reacts to the changes by informing the control unit. 3. Control unit. The control unit then communicates the change needed to bring the body back into balance. And the last one, effector. The effector receives this information and acts on the change that is needed. Some examples of homeostasis are thermoregulation, blood glucose regulation, calcium homeostasis, and osmoregulation. Organ systems. An organ system is a group of anatomical structures that work together to perform a specific function or task. The body cannot function without the cooperation of its organ systems. The failure of even one organ system can lead to severe disability or even death. The human body is composed of 11 organ systems in total, and they are integumentary, that is skin, hair, and nails; muscular, that is cardiac, smooth, and skeletal muscles; skeletal, that is bones and joints; nervous, that is brain, spinal cord, and nerves; circulatory, that is heart, blood, and blood vessels; lymphatic, that is red bone marrow, thymus, lymphatic vessels, thoracic duct, spleen, and lymph nodes; respiratory, that is the nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchus, and lungs; endocrine, that is pineal gland, pituitary gland, thyroid gland, thymus, adrenal gland, pancreas, and ovary testis; urinary excretory, that is kidney, ureter, urinary bladder, and urethra; reproductive, that this one depends on the sex; and digestive, that is oral cavity, esophagus, liver, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, etc. These systems, while interdependent, can become out of tune. When one is not functioning properly, the others will attempt to correct the problem, and all the systems will work together to try to create what is known as homeostasis, or a state of balance within the body.
Hi, my name is Jan Rosales, and I'm going to talk about health and disease, health in adolescents, and healthy lifestyles. But let's define first what is health. The Royal Spanish Academic defines health as the state in which the organic being normally exercises all its functions. Maybe this definition is not too clear, but another definition that can help us to understand this is the definition given by the World Health Organization that says that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease. And now we know what is health, let's define disease. Disease is a disorder of a structure or function in a human, animal, or plant, especially one that produces specific signs or symptoms, or that affect a specific location and is not simple direct result of physical injury. Adolescent health. Adolescence is a stage characterized by the transition between the childhood and adulthood, which implies many changes that can be physical, psychological, and social. One aspect to consider is risk in adolescence. What is a risk? Well, the Royal Spanish Academy defines risk like a contingency or approximate damage. Some factors of risk that Argentines have are demographic, behavioral, physiological, genetic, and environmental. At last one, I'm going to talk about healthy lifestyles. A lifestyle is a behavior of individual nature that are linked to chronic diseases and are related to the perception of risk factors. Well, in simple words, healthy lifestyles lead to health. There is a list of 7 behaviors that can help you to have a good health. These are sleep between 7 to 8 hours a day, have breakfast every day, eat your 3 meals a day, have your weight over in acceptable limit, make a physical activity regularly, do not or moderate your consumption of alcohol, and not smoke. Thank you.